This is Lori with God Aliens and a Cup of Coffee, and I hope you enjoy this podcast with Gary Heseltine, and it was truly informative. And again, enjoy. Hi, this is Major Rehfeldt, and I'm with my guest, Gary Heseltine. Gary, how did you come up with the title for non-human, the Rendlesham Forest Incidents, 42 years of denial?
By the time I'd reached the conclusions, when I'd broken down each of the incidents in that late December period, in the book it lists 18, it's actually 17 now, because one of them turns out to be in December 79. So it's not part of the late December ones. So 17 different timed events over the late December period, and not one of them can be described in any man-made terrestrial explanation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it, whilst we talk about extraterrestrial, I leave it open to say the bottom line is it's probably extraterrestrial, but it could be interdimensional, it could be ultra-terrestrial from somewhere else. But the point is, it's not human. So that was the common denominator. And people are now starting to talk about non-human intelligence is interacting with planet Earth. And that's my assessment. And in my role as Vice President of ICER, the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, we say the same thing, that basically after 75 years, we think it's probably extraterrestrial, but it could be interdimensional, etc., or a combination of both. But the point is, the Earth is being engaged with a non-human intelligence, and that is coming to the fore now with all the recent revelations with David Grusch, etc., which seems to map out agree with what we're saying.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what you thought of that, the recent, I guess
David Grusch.
Yeah,
No,
the whistleblower.
I mean, on the face of it, his military and intelligence background appeared to be impeccable. He came out with this on the 5th, and here we are 11 days later, and nobody has knocked his record. He's had a lot of senior personnel speak out. But for me, the most telling thing that says he's genuine, and he is who he says he is if he did give a briefing to the Inspector General for 11 hours, as is reported, then that says to me, then it really is real, because they would have not heard his testimony if he did not have facts, operational names, classifications. This is the project, it's there, it's located there, which is basically what he said in interviews afterwards. But you don't give testimony for 11 hours unless you've got something really to back up what you're saying. It's not just like having a little conversation, a little chat like we are now. 11 hours before a panel of probably several people, including the Inspector General, of legal people. And if that is true, and I've not seen it verified, but there's no reason to say it's not true, because nobody's said anything about it. But if that is true, I think that the intelligence community have got a lot to be scared of, because I think what is clear to me as an individual, speaking individually, it strikes me that the RO office and Sean Kirkpatrick are out of the loop. They are not able to access the highest levels of special access programs, so they don't know. They're in the dark. But it raises questions, because David Grusch will say that Sean Kirkpatrick is well aware of David Grusch. So for him, Sean Kirkpatrick, to maintain this, well, we've seen no really any evidence, when he knows that there's somebody who is extremely well connected, part of he was even cleared to brief the presidential, give him the latest GOS-based kind of technology on UAP. he was cleared up to presidential level. So that kind of person is in the know. And I suspect that if the 11 hours is true, that the intelligence community may be frightened stiff of what's going to appear if we do get these witness congressional hearings, because I think that will be the time that the mainstream press worldwide start to get on board. If David Grusch gets to that, and we're told by Tim Burchett that that's going to happen, and that David Grusch is going to be involved, if that happens, I think that's really the crucial time, because if he stands up to scrutiny and nobody has knocked his account by then I think you really are at a point of no return in terms of the intelligence community. You really are on the brink of a paradigm shift. And I think, if anything, whilst there's been a lot of national and international news media, certain big papers like the New York Times, Washington Post, still haven't committed to it. And I think that, the likes of CNN, NBC, they have not committed to it yet. But I suspect that they're aware of it, and they're waiting in the wings to see what happens if these congressional hearings occur. I think the congressional hearings with him, people like Robert Salas talking about missile shutdowns, would be a game changer for the media, because how could they ignore it any longer? And I think this is the key thing. So far, we've had a congressional hearing with two intelligence officials who were clearly Pentagon officials who don't really want to give away much. And then the second one with Sean Kirkpatrick, he basically looked very uncomfortable, and that he wants to just turn it all into about science, and he pretty much ignore the past, or not really accept that there's some great academic work done in the past. And the recent NASA hearing, whilst good that NASA are having this briefing, it's clear that the 16 people who were there on display didn't have a clue really about UFOs and their real background. And that's alarming. It's good that they're looking at it, but if they don't involve serious researchers with a long history of the subject, then it's a bit like going into a library of 1,000 million books and asking for one book without speaking to the librarian. It's one arm tied behind your back. Whereas if they had a couple of really good experts as a part of that, they could save a lot of time. Because if they say USO, they'll say, right, well, I'll get you some USO cases. If they say radar cases, they say, well, I'll get you radar cases. They haven't got to go looking for it, which is at the moment, they sound like they just want to get involved in the science and accumulate the data, which is good. But there is already, since the Nimitz incident, a hell of a lot of US Navy data that should be made available to them. And I think the more that they did that, they would very quickly realize that you're dealing with something that's non-human.
Absolutely. Wow. It really comes at a perfect time, with your book and with the eventually the documentary Capel Green coming out, because it really echoes what David is going through now with what many military people who stuck their necks out, such as Larry Warren, what they've gone through. I mean, the whole system of Department of Defense, and they spend quite a bit of their time distancing themselves from things that would appear to be uncomfortable, or they don't want to be seen as anything but factual, yet they're told they're not allowed to talk about it. In fact, they blatantly lie, because they have somebody who's a peon saying, well, that information, we really didn't keep it, and it's not part of Freedom of Information Act, but I'm sorry, but we don't do Project Blue Book anymore. And I just think that what I think right now is that David, and I don't know his full story, however, he's in the vortex of something just really evil and dangerous, and it's the people he works for, because he's probably saying, hey, look, we got some good information here that we could actually use to help climate change.
Well, the new
But
technology angle is amazing. What, if you look at what benefits could medically we through a greater technology, and if the world all came together and looked at the positive aspects of a non-human intelligence, it could be tremendous for the Earth in terms of environmental, medical, etc. But for me, one of the big frustrations, and I've always had this frustration after many years of being involved in the subject, is the media. The media, the conduit to make the rest of the world dull on the subject. They're the one that's dumbed them down. They've been the ones that's enacted the policies of government and the military. I mean, for example, I put 5 national newspapers covered various aspects of the book, but how many of them were headline stories in the US? And it's an American case about Rendlesham Forest. So it strikes me that the media is very much controlled on this subject, and that's what we're battling with. And until and if there are these congressional hearings with people like David Grusch, Robert Salas, those kind of people give their testimony, I think by then there will be a lot of press wanting to hear this evidence, and I think that's really where it could take off. But then after that, once they get on board, there's no turning back, because they can't go backwards. It's a bit more like the genie out of the bottle. We knew that with the 3 FLIR videos, the Tic Tac gimbal and Go Fast, they were the catalyst for this general change in attitude. But can you imagine if people who are listening really hear testimony for the first time in Congress saying that, yes, we've got recovered craft, we've got alien bodies, we have got an interaction with something, it's not just extraterrestrial, it's a combination of both. Here is testimony going back many years from our decorated military personnel who have seen and observed nuclear missile shutdowns. I think the press, who have never really taken it seriously at that point, if they're there in numbers, camera-wise, they're going to go, what? We thought there was nothing to this. And I think this cover-up, in terms of the media, that's where the dam will break, because I'm hoping that they really get on board and start hunting down the evidence, as they should have done many years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that, when it comes to what so many members of the 81st Security Police Squadron had gone through during that Rendlesham Forest event and my East Gate sighting, I think that we need to really focus on that. Just because a lot of time has gone by and many people are starting to die off,
Absolutely.
That this issue is not going away. This issue is not going away, because we've got we've got people out there who are determined to get the word out and to support David and to support you and your organization you were talking about,
Nice.
to help get this out, because we want to know, we deserve to know. And I know a lot of this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, this is not,
It's not new.
Yeah, the question that I have, I wonder, and not just out of speculation, who's really running the world? Because I don't believe often the president of the United States doesn't really. I don't think they keep him in the know.
I certainly think some presidents are not kept in the loop. I think some have been, but I suspect most aren't, because I think what's really happened is that the intelligence community have really indirectly controlled various subjects, including UFOs, for the last 60, 70 years. And I think that's what, Eisenhower said, the military industrial complex. And I think that's actually happened. And I think that it was probably around that time, 1960, I think, when he gave that famous statement, that he felt that we might be losing control to this military industrial complex. And I think the real answer is we probably did lose control, and the intelligence community were the subtle arbiters of what the world saw and what presidents were told. And I think that's one of the big secrets that may emerge, is that there is this shadow or alternative history of the last 75 years, shall we say, of mankind's history that will need to be rewritten. And I think there is a chance that if David Grusch really is who he claims to be and he appears to be, and he really does have all the names for all the projects, the special access programs, he can name all the people who are in charge of them. If he has got all that detailed material, and I think Ross Coulthard said it took 4 years to assess everything that he got before deciding to go as a whistleblower. If he has accumulated all of that and he has it in depth, then I think that we're really on the brink, because how can they really just ignore what he's saying if he is so precise? And obviously, from a human layperson point of view, the media want to see bodies, the media want to see the spacecraft, and that might come in time. But there's lots of other precedents where they have to believe in the classified world. But if the other people in the classified world are saying, no, what David Grusch is saying is absolutely true, and they've got that high rank, and they're classified, they're able to talk about these classified programs peripherally in a congressional hearing, then how can you ignore that? If other senior people within the intelligence complex, who maybe have been sympathetic to getting this kind of truth out for many, many years, now see an opportunity, perhaps for the very first time, to take it away from the intelligence community and come clean and say, yes, we do know about it, and yes, we have lied because of whatever. But I think there's a chance now, and I think a lot of people are waiting in the wings, hoping that it comes to fruition. I'm one of them. I hope that David Grusch is who he claims to be, he appears to be. I look at it from a common sense point of view as well, that people like Ralph Blumenthal, Leslie Kane, Bryce Sable, Ross Coulthard, they're not stupid people. They're very intelligent people. And if they're putting their names to it, then I think they wouldn't have done so without a lot of verification and checking. And they clearly know a lot more on what he did say to the Inspector General. And for them to go on the record and really go behind David Grusch, then I think, that I think is worrying for the intelligence community, because they might just get found out. And I really hope that they do.
Well, what's interesting too is when you look at the most recent congressional hearings they've had, and talking about the leadership that's in those positions, I think many of them are put into those positions because they won't talk, because they will lie, because those who don't point out that the king is naked are the ones that will do well. It's the people that point out the truth. And it's interesting that the truth is really a game changer on people's careers and promotion.
Absolutely. The general whistleblower does not have a good life. They get picked on, and they're often made to suffer incredibly, both professionally and personally, for doing what is essentially the right thing. Now, what makes David Grusch a bit different is that he has told the very right people. He's not disclosed any classified secrets to people who he shouldn't tell them to. He's done everything by the book, and by him going to the Inspector General in 2021 and listing it for supposedly for 11 hours, names, places, dates, locations, then he's done it absolutely right. But he still is a whistleblower, in the sense that he could be the one that finally outs the intelligence community for what it is, and having controlled and lied to the world, the American public in particular, but also to the world for 70 odd years. And with that, there will be a lot of consequences. And
well, it's a reflection. Yeah, it's a reflection upon the generals and whatnot. If you've got this guy saying, "Hey, look, we can really use this technology to better the world," and I just can't sleep at night, because I know that we've got this. Why aren't we showing it? Why aren't we doing this, this, and this? Just even asking those types of questions. I'm sure when he left the room of whatever, the 1, 2, 3, 4-star general, they probably looked at their assistant and said, get rid of him, because they, it's really the whole concept of being railroaded out of the military is painful.
Oh, absolutely. But the fact that he hasn't, and nobody's been able to put a finger on him since went public, I think is telling. I really do, because so far in 11 days, nobody's been able to cast the real aspersions to him and whatever. So far, so good. And if that gets to 2 months down the line and there's a congressional hearing and nobody's been able to strip him down and say he's a liar, a hoax, or whatever, if there's no substantive evidence to contradict his account, then I think the intelligence community are really on the brink of being exposed. And I think it's long overdue. And if that's the case, then I would applaud David Grusch for doing that, because it's of benefit to mankind, to the human race. That's what we are, the human race.
Yeah, and it's just interesting. I thought Ross did a great job on the interview that we'd seen with David on it. And if David is ever watching this podcast, I'd like to say, you got a lot of people on your side. If you need support, Gary and I and many, many, many others are there for you, because we've been living with the whole concept of how the military is being treated, who witness various unusual, extraordinary events and are told to shut up and go away.
Absolutely. I mean, what happened to you? What happened to all the others at Rendlesham, and the witnesses, the interrogations, the aftermath, and the amount of incidents that were played down and not reported because they were given a hard time if you did report it. It's ridiculous. And this is down to the policy of the United States, and probably really down to the policy of the intelligence community who suppressed it. And I've said for a long time that when disclosure happens, you'll know it happens, because it'll be on every channel, like a terrorist incident, 24/7, every country, 24/7. It'll be like COVID or whatever. The first few weeks, it's wall-to-wall coverage, and it will be like that. And I think the dam will break, and it will break very quickly once the press really realise that it's true. That's the key, is getting them on board, because they still have so much power. But I think that time is coming. And if nobody knocks David Grusch by the time he gives his presentation, then I think you really are on that brink. And I think that for the first time, the world may wake up, and the media will then go on the hunt for the truth, as they should have done many years ago. But they will finally get on board. They'll still start hounding people like they would do on any other subject. Now, I'm not recommending hounding people, but what I'm saying is there will be a natural reaction by 95% of the American public, the world public, to say we've been lied upon. And America is not going to come out of this very well initially. And I think that I've said maybe for 10 years now, there should be what's called truth and reconciliation hearings, which is similar to what in South Africa, when they got rid of apartheid, which was obviously diabolical. When they got rid of that, they held these hearings, and basically all the people who were involved in the apartheid regime and keeping it going, they then gave testimony. Some of them went to prison or whatever. Now, I'm not saying people go to prison now, but basically we need to talk it through. All the people who've played a part in that secrecy should be called to give their evidence and say, right, what part did you play? Right, when you tell us, then thanks very much. It was then, it's not now, but thanks, whatever. we need to hear it. And I think that's the way to deal with it, is just to get people to go on the record, because they will probably say, well, all I was doing is acting under orders, which is the classic line going back to the Nuremberg trials. I was doing things under orders. And that's probably true for a lot of these people. But we need to find out what they know. We need to know if they've got bodies. And I think the public has a right to be told, yes, we do. And here's what they look like. You don't have to be shown the classified facility, but you need to say, we have that body and that's a photograph. This is a craft, that's a photograph, it's been declassified. You don't need to give the sensitive locations and all the sensor data and all that, but you've got to give more. And apparently, as people like Luis Elizondo has said, David Grusch has said, Ross Coulthard said, there's plenty of really good footage out there that the senators are getting to see, the Congress people are getting to see in their classified briefings, but we're not as the public. Well, Tim Burchett is saying, well, why can't we strip these down? And why can't we show these to the public? And the reason why there's still this reluctance is because if you showed those videos, apparently 40 minutes was shown to them. We got 30 seconds at the Congressional hearing where the two Pentagon officials were there. They got 40 minutes, and apparently many of them came out saying it was a total game changer, that they realized it was real. And now we should be able to see that. And I think the reason why they're not shown to you is because they would have such an impact on people and the media that they go, no, this is real now. Why haven't you shown us these before? And they would then be in a different ball game. And I think that's why you're not getting to see these classified videos. But they should be made public because the world has a right to know. So I'm really hoping that the likes of Tim Burchett and Senator Comer do organise them sooner rather than later, and we can get to the truth on this. And they have said, we want to get to the bottom of this. And maybe this is for the first time that these officials admit that they've been lied to, and they need to get to the bottom of it. The American public, the Senate, the Congress have had no oversight. So the intelligence community has been running things really for a long time in certain areas, and this is certainly one of them.
I really wonder too if, say, if the this invisible leadership has been brokering with the military across the world, saying, hey, look, yeah, we don't want you to expose this, but tell you what, we will give you certain things, and it'll just kind of meld into the way things are done. For instance, the way computer technology has moved so radically fast. So we went from the typewriter, bam, now we're into artificial intelligence. I mean, maybe they're trying to say, hey, look, we are dealing with them. We are making, we give them this, they give us this, and it is happening. Unfortunately, the rule is we can't disclose who is giving it to us, and which would be kind of an interesting concept. But but the whole thing is that there are people out there that do know, and for some reason,
I think one of the biggest things that needs to change is this, that people like yourself who've witnessed things, especially in an official on-duty capacity, you deserve to have explanations. You deserve to be apologized to for being given a hard time. And so many thousands and thousands of people over the decades have been in exactly your position on duty, saw something they shouldn't see, have got questions, and you're basically not given any outlet to discuss it. And that creates psychological trauma because you're not allowed to talk about something that's incredibly a defining moment probably in your life for most people, to see something that they cannot explain. And I think that's really one of the sad things, is that people, in order to protect the secret, so many people have had to be hurt psychologically, mentally, and I'm sure people have taken their lives because they couldn't cope with the kind of trauma that they experienced and had nowhere to take it to. I think that's really one of the terrible things, and that needs to end, because people did. Larry Warren didn't sign up to do that. You didn't sign up to see that. Adrian Bustinza didn't sign up to get interrogated and threatened with his life, and when he was a sergeant, and it made him feel so bad that he wanted to go AWOL. One of the most powerful things in the book is that page where I'm interviewing Adrian Bustinza, and I let him just talk and talk, and he talks about his interrogations, and it is palpable when you read it back, like as an actor when I was proofing the book, and I read it back and I thought, Jesus, this leaps off the page as one of the more, if not the most powerful page in the book, because he's reliving it, and he's back there, and he's terrified, and he feels ashamed, scared, threatened with his life, just because he saw a UFO and saw something, beyond his control. Why should he made to be feel like that? And that's wrong. So in many ways, the book is about trying to get people to change the narrative and say, come out. There are people waiting in the wings, I'm sure. More witnesses should come forward if they get to hear about this book. But the people in America, what I'm talking about, there's a lot of opposition to this book because it tells the truth. In an unambiguous, it lays out the facts. As a former detective, that's what I did. I took sentiment out of it and just relayed the facts, old and new, and re-interviewed many new people, or re-interviewed many people and got some new information as well. And people do not want this information to come out. So people like you need to have a voice, and the book is your voice, hopefully.
Yeah, I also look at the book as being a wonderful way of introducing Capel Green, because I think when people do see the documentary Capel Green, it really will add more dimension and clarity to the narrative.
We live in a very visual society now. If you think of TikTok videos, we like to see something visual. So I think the fact that the aerial footage of Rendlesham Forest in particular will bring places alive in a way it's never been done. The special effects, I mean, there's some fantastic special effect recreations, of which I've obviously seen the runs for, and they are superb, and it will bring the story to life in a way that it's never been done properly before. It won't be sensationalistic. It'll be based on the witness testimony, and that's important, that it's as close to the witness descriptions as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Recently, I was on the unofficial 81st Security Police Squadron Facebook page, and they got into a conversation of other things going on over there at Woodbridge area. And one I never even heard of. It was called the Peg Man. It's a man who walks on a pegged leg. And I've heard of the other one, this woman with no face riding a bicycle. I mean, there was a lot of horror out there. And I mean, and then when I was reading about Airman James Stewart,
His account's amazing.
Yeah, I really, I mean, I could actually visualize it, and it made sense. It was probably a gray, that's what I think, with the long fingers, and but the fact that it's the fact that a lot of people that did work out there, fortunately, didn't feel fear. I mean, that he continued on working, but.
I think one of the main things that I came to realize by going to the forest a lot for the filming is how strange it still is. There were, and I won't reveal the details, but during the making of the documentary, there were some strange events that occurred while we were filming in the forest. There are some other testimonies that are not from the time period of late December, much more recent, that we became aware of, witnesses that had approached us while we were filming, some of which were very local people and were fascinating. But I genuinely feel, and I never used to think this, but I genuinely feel that Rendlesham Forest is a strange place. and there are still strange occurrences that happen now, and I can't explain them, but I just think it's one of these strange places. And I used to think of, you think of people talked about portals 10, 15 years ago, and I thought, no, that's crazy. But I've had to change, because I think, how do you explain how these things happen? And I think with all that we've learned about the Skinwalker Ranch, that seems to be a place that is strange.
Yes.
And it taps into not only UFO, non-human, it's paranormal, strange creatures, Bigfoot, whatever. It's a whole mishmash. And I think maybe to a lesser degree that Rendlesham Forest is definitely still a strange place. Whether that's because there's something there that we're not aware of that brings this activity there, whether there is a portal of some kind, I don't know. But I definitely think it's a strange place. And I remember one particular night of filming when it just felt a really weird thing. And later on that night, something happened after I'd left and driven home, but there was still filming going on in the middle of the night, and something happened. I won't allude to anything more. But yes, I definitely felt that there was something strange, and I hear other accounts that have come forward over the years, and I do think strange things are happening still there.
Possibly whatever's out there, he probably doesn't want people to be out there at night, midnight or something. It's kind of, maybe that's
who knows, but is there strange things happening? Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been happening for probably thousands of years. Probably goes back,
Probably, but in many ways we'll never know. People, when people say, oh, it's when things have been happening thousands of years, yes, we can guess that but we'll never prove it, because we can only go by kind of the empirical evidence that we've gathered maybe over the last 100, 200 years, written accounts, etc. But yes, I mean, like the ancient alien theory, I believe that. I think we could well be seeded from Martians, because Mars was a perfectly viable planet a few billion years ago, and then through some cataclysm it's lost its atmosphere. Now, if you had a technological civilization there and it's holding the Earth, what would you do? You'd send a lifeboat out. In effect, you'd see people on your nearest planet. It's what we would do if we had a problem. We'd try going to the Moon and the Mars and start colonies. So there's lots of questions about early man's history, and Francis Crick basically said we've had a sideways insertion, we've been like upgraded. I think that's entirely possible, but in a sense it's hard to prove, in a sense because it's thousands of years ago, millions of years ago maybe. I think there's a general consensus now that there may well have been some historical aspect intervention in humankind in its development, but we'll never ultimately be able to prove it. Well, certainly not until an alien or somebody says, yeah, we were there.
What's interesting, if you think of it this way, during the life of Jesus, nothing was documented during that time. Most of the documentation that they came out with the New Testament was maybe about 20, 30, 40, 70 years after. And then it was reworked, maybe over time, other people got their hands on it. But the only evidence they have of anything came from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And that was the Old Testament. But it was really interesting how we as a country surround ourselves, with this, and have the Bible as, in our hand, and saying this is the truth, when in actuality, what would have been the truth is if somebody wrote it down while it was going on, kind of like the way we write a statement when we see something.
Absolutely.
That's where.
No, I mean, it's a very difficult subject to talk about religion, because it causes so many emotions. But suffice to say that, when you talk about the Old Testament, when they did the Council of Nicene, I think about 300 years after the supposed death of Christ, they then decided to ditch a load of chapters from the Old Testament. So that's the kind of sense, we don't want to tell you that. Oh, we don't like that bit. Now,
that was, I think,
strikes me as wrong.
Yeah, I think that was either the 16th or 17th century that they did that.
Well,
But it was,
I don't
yeah,
know,
but
but
it was huge. It was,
I know that a lot of chapters were taken out,
yeah. Hmm.
and that just doesn't seem right. That seems censorship to me, because it then
Absolutely.
says that whoever's in charge is dictating the
Yeah.
information you get, which isn't a far cry from what the US Air Force have done with UFOs for the last 75 years. Whoever's in control, it's their version of events that you get to
And
hear
what's
about.
and what's interesting with what we're talking about with UFOs versus, other topics is that we have evidence. I mean, we do have, I mean, if evidence is
Great
what people
cases.
see or hear or touch, we have it. Do we have the artifacts? I mean, there are a lot of artifacts throughout the world that you can start looking at. I have a woman on my Facebook page that's always showing different artifacts and that were from like they did they checked the, I don't know what they checked the calcium or
Yeah, yeah. There's
and
lots
they
of
find,
There's
yeah,
lots of out of place objects, UBIs, out of place objects all around the world that can't be explained, that appear to be hundreds of thousands of years old.
right,
And how can they be produced? There's
yeah,
just so many question marks about certain things. But in a sense, you'll never really, unless you're interested in this kind of subject, you never get to hear about these things. And certainly the mainstream don't go out their way to tell you about these things. So I think one of the other things as well is that people often remark that whoever wins the war writes the future. They hit and writes the history the way they want history written. So it's the winners of the Second World War, in a sense, that start to write the history and put their take on it. And I think that you take that back all the way through all of the empires that's ever been
hmm
and the great Roman civilization, they will present it as the victor in their light, in the way that they want to. They'll put their spin on it. And I don't think there's anything different now than what we do with politics now. That it's a spin
oh
on
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you see it spinning in action, and now on top of it, like I mentioned, the chatbot, the artificial intelligence that's out there now that can really reshape things even on a different
Well,
level.
you think about that. That's within 50 years, and you look at, I was born. I remember with the big TVs, the big tubes inside, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you've got the computer chip, and when you saw it
Mhm.
under a microscope, it was loads of little moving parts, and I'm thinking, where did we make that leap from? And it seems too big a leap, and we have gone through in the last 20 years this incredible change where now everybody has a smartphone that's far more powerful than the Apollo space program. Just one mobile phone is far more powerful than what we did when we went to the moon. So the pace of change is incredible, and
Mhm.
the camera facilities now are getting so much better. But just going back to when we talk about a disclosure on a bigger world and David Grusch, I've been saying for a while, if the Americans don't start telling the truth soon, they may well get caught out by an event that occurs like the Phoenix Lights in 1997. If the
Mhm.
Phoenix Lights happen tomorrow, and it was an object, a boomerang-shaped object, was seen over 200 miles and tracked, many thousands of people saw it. Now, in that 26 years since, we've got 4K, 8K quality cameras. We have live streaming. Now, 1997, it was videotape, grainy, poor quality. The
Mhm.
military just about confused the people by saying it was flares, and the vast majority of people went with that. The press went with it. But if you had an incident, a real-time incident now, with all the technology that's available now in smartphones, the story's out. Because if somebody suddenly came on tonight and said there's a huge boomerang shaped object over Phoenix, everybody's going to be out there with the mobile phones, everybody's going to join in on the live stream, and there is no way that whatever technology is out there, you could suppress the amount of information that was being recorded in real time. The cat would be out the bag. Now, do the Americans wait for something like that to happen? And every few years you get a big incident where there is that potential, and then it's a done deal, and then people may be very frightened because suddenly it's real and they had no preparation? Or do the Americans go, well, actually, the technology is catching up and it's running out of control now. Something's going to happen. We need to tell the people soon, else we're going to look really, really, really bad instead of just bad.
Oh yeah, I mean the
I
conversation.
think there's something pushing this.
Yeah, media. The
Well,
yeah, because
I'd like to think
I
the
was
media
saying that.
pushed it, but I privately think that there's something already happened in the background where they can't control it for much longer. Therefore, on high, people have been encouraged to go out there, start looking for evidence, and then I think mysteriously they might find the evidence to say, oh, look, there is life out there. We are not alone. Yes, we do think we've been contacted. And I think that would be a putting a new face on disclosure, to quote, and get the Americans off the hook. But I suspect that the likes of David Grusch coming along is saying, no, we're going to get to the truth here, and I've had enough, and this isn't right. You're lying to Congress, you're lying to the president, you're lying to the Senate. No oversight.
Yeah, you're swearing under oath on top.
Correct.
Of it, and you're
So I think there's something else is pushing this, and I'd like to think that there's some event that's happened or is happening. And if you think about that, David Grusch was 2021, he gave his information to the Inspector General. So they have known for a long time that at some point this guy is going to speak out. And I think that might be one of the reasons why there's maybe a rush to get things changed. You think about it, how things have changed in the last 6 years since the release of the New York Times article and the 3 Fleur videos. That's changed things tremendously. But this is taking it to the next step and beyond. And I really hope that he checks out to be as promising as he appears to be.
Yeah, especially when he adds the science to what he was talking about, when he's saying, well, as an engineer, as a,
Well, I think he's a physicist, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's degreed in physics.
Yeah.
But
not an easy degree.
Yeah. So he's got a degree in physics, I believe. So it strikes me that he's standing up to say, look, we've told this lie for long enough. Now I'm aware of it. I cannot sit idly by and do nothing. And I think that's a very brave, but ultimately it's a decision for him. A lot of people would have chosen to remain in the shadows, but he clearly thinks, no, I've got the clearances, I've got the information, this is wrong, and I'm going to do something about it. And if that is the case, then he is to be applauded. But a lot of people are going to be very shocked. We're not going to be so shocked because we've suspected this all along.
We know it.
Well, the 95% of the world is going to be horrified and incredibly shocked because they still think there's really nothing to this subject. They think it's foreign adversary or China, Russia at best.
Absolutely. So he would be the conscientious messenger, where all the other people, and unfortunately, they found that there really aren't that many generals out there who are like Patton or people that would really stick their necks out. That most people, they get promoted by keeping quiet, shutting their mouth. The ones that open their mouth, and I really feel, say, for Larry Warren, he didn't know how the game was set up. He just got there at the base. I mean, he's not even there a month.
Bad luck. Bad luck.
Yeah. It's
wrong
like
place, wrong time.
Yeah. Well, in many ways, for a lot of us, it was the right time, because it was probably the most cathartic event in my life when I found out that he wrote a book, Left at Eastgate. I mean, I was like, no one knows about Eastgate. And it was just really
that was good that book did that for you, and it's still a good book. It's still a good book. You can't tell the people it's still a very good book.
Yes.
It's for other people to say how good my book is, but I'm pretty pleased with it, and so far the reviews have been universally excellent, so I'm very humbled by that.
Well, with all the work done with the Capel Green, I'm really, I think most of us needed this book as, again, a precursor to Capel Green. And I think it'll definitely really help. I like what you wrote in my chapter about I truly appreciate it a lot. And you wrote about, well, we're not going to talk much about what Lori went through. You're going to have to watch it on Capel Green. So anyone out there watching this, you're going to watch about my situation on Capel Green.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things that I'm trying to do with the book is to change the narrative, because basically 4 people have controlled the narrative for 25 years, controlled virtually every documentary ever made in English speaking, and that's Colonel Holt, Jim Penniston, to a lesser extent John Burroughs, and Nick Pope. They have controlled the subject to Rendlesham, and it's wrong because there are so many other good accounts there, and people like Steve Longell, yourself, Adrian Bustinza, Larry Warren. They've got fantastic testimony, and in fact, I'll be putting out a story about Adrian Bustinza and Larry Warren in the week, and it'll be interesting to see if the press pick it up, because they're still not playing ball. They'll print the story, but they're not still giving it the gravitas that they should, because they still think there's nothing to it, and that's what you're battling with. But we can try. But the book was really about saying the narrative is wrong, and there are other good people who deserve to have a voice, and that's what I've tried to do.
Absolutely. And I truly thank you for that from the bottom of my heart, because I've always felt a little bit shunned. And so, yeah, once again, it's healing. It's very healing for me to have this opportunity to be able to do this. And I think that, yeah, when you put all these pieces together, it really makes just an incredibly amazing story. Fantastic
It's an
story.
incredibly complex story. I've said to many people, I believe that it's the most complicated UFO case in history, because there are so many moving parts, there are so many different incidents, so many different people, so much politics, so much government interference, press interference. I really think it's very complicated, and it, like I say, it took me 3 years to write it. It took me 6 months just to get my head around how I was going to write it and how I was going to format it, because it's such a complicated case. But with all the reviews that I've had, both from researchers and the public alike, then I seem to have got it right, and I'm humbled by their kind words.
You definitely did get it right, for sure. And for anyone watching it who has an interest in learning more, please check out The Non-Human, the Rendlesham Forest UFO Incidents, 42 Years of Denial by Gary Heseltine.
Yep, well done.
I'm working it. And also to invite him or any of the witnesses to this event. I know a lot of folks out there wouldn't mind sharing their story as actual witnesses.
Reach out, and if anybody wants to email me, I put it in the book, heseltinegary@hotmail.com. Contact me and I'll talk to you. I'm keen to learn of your incidents.
I'll make sure that it's in the description box on this podcast. Again, Gary, thank you so much, and I so appreciate what you have to offer.
And if you want to go back and do another show where we really go into the nitty-gritty of the accounts, the new information, then let me know and we'll set it up.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. I would definitely be there. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.